Hi there data enthusiasts, welcome back to the Analytics Pod. Today we are diving into time series analysis. That's a fancy term for predicting the future by examining the past. Think of it as the crystal ball of data analytics minus the hocus pocus. If you're ready to learn how companies forecast sales or how Netflix guesses what you want to watch next or tomorrow, then buckle up, this one is for you. First things first, let's define time series analysis in plain English. Essentially, a time series is just a list of data points collected over time. Daily stock options, monthly sales figures, hourly website traffic, you name it. When you line them up all in chronological order, you get a handy chart that hopefully reveals some pattern. Time series analysis is the process of examining these time-ordered data points to figure out how they behave and, most excitingly, to predict where they are heading. You want to predict next month's electricity bill based on last year's usage? That's time series analysis. You need to figure out if sales always spiked in December? Again, time series analysis to the rescue. Now, why should you care? Because time series analysis helps you make decisions based on hard evidence rather than guesswork. Whether you are an investor trying to predict market trends or a business owner scheduling inventory, it's all about using historical patterns to inform tomorrow's actions. Basic components of a time series. Before we start predicting the future, we need to talk about the key ingredients that make time series data so special. Before we start predicting the future, we need to talk about the key ingredients that make time series data so special. Typically, a time series can be broken down into a few main components. Number one is a trend, the overall direction that the data is moving over time. Is it steadily going up, slowly going down, or maybe it's a roller coaster that's just too wild to pin down? Number two is seasonality, basically patterns that repeat at regular intervals. Sales might go crazy during the holidays, or website traffic might always drop on weekends. These repeating patterns are called seasonality. Three is cyclical patterns. These are like longer term ups and downs that aren't necessarily linked to the seasons. It could be an economic boom or bust, a multi-year cycle, or just the general vibe of the universe at the time. Number four is irregularity, or some people just call this noise. The unpredictable stuff basically. Sometimes weird anomalies happen, like a global pandemic that throws all of your carefully curated forecasts out of the window. Hint hint. This is the random variation that we can't easily explain. When you talk about time series analysis, we are often trying to separate these components so that we can model them and predict what happens next. Now for the fun part, how do we actually do time series forecasting? And there are tons of methods. Some of them are simple and some of them are pretty complicated. So let's break down a few popular ones. Number one is moving averages and exponential smoothing. So moving average, you take a handful of the most recent data points, average them together, and that becomes your forecast. Then you slide that window across the timeline. It's pretty simple but very effective when patterns are not too complicated. Exponential smoothing, this puts more weight on the most recent data points. Think of it like telling your future self what just happened is super important, but also not forgetting about the older stuff, if that makes sense. Number two is ARIMA, as I like to say, which is auto-regressive integrated moving average. That's quite a mouthful. If you've ever heard of advanced time series techniques, you've probably heard of ARIMA. It's basically a fancy acronym that says we look at past values of a series, differences between them, and also a moving average of errors. ARIMA models can handle trends, and if you had a seasonal component, making it SARIMA, it can also tackle that holiday spike in your data. Number three is machine learning and deep learning models. Methods like random forest, gradient boost, or even neural networks like LSTM networks can be used for more complex forecasting. These can spot patterns that are too complex for simple methods, but they often require a lot more data, and sometimes more coffee to keep you going through the training process because it takes a long time. Which method should you pick? It really depends on your dataset and how much data you have and what you are trying to do. Sometimes the simplest approach gets you 90% of the way there without giving you a headache. To get a feel of how time series analysis works in the real world, let's look at some common examples. So number 1, finance. Stock prices, cryptocurrency trends, and interest rates. Investors use time series models to guess tomorrow's price. Though let's be honest, finance is pretty wild, so it's not always 100%, but it's pretty much there. Number 2 is retail and e-commerce. Predicting sales volumes and inventory needs. You don't want to run out of the most popular sneakers right before the back to school rush. Number 3 is weather forecasting. Meteorologists track temperature, humidity, and a bunch of other factors over time. That's time series data, people. There's a reason your weather app changes 10 times a day. It's constantly being updated with new data. Number 4 is web analytics. Website traffic, bounce rates, engagement metrics. These all vary hour by hour, day by day. Time series analysis helps you understand user behavior, plan server loads, and decide the best time to upload your next killer blog post. These are just a few examples, but honestly, if you can measure anything over time, you can do time series analysis on it. Now, if you're rolling up your sleeves, ready to dive into some fancy forecasting, here are a few quick tips. Number 1, check for stationarity. Many methods, like ARIMA for example, assume your time series is stationary, meaning its statistical properties don't change over time. If they do, you might need to difference your data or take a log transform. Basically apply mathematic magic to stabilize your data. Mind the seasonality. If your data has strong recurring patterns like weekly cycles, make sure your model can handle seasonality. ARIMA has a seasonal variant called SARIMA, or you can use specialized models like Profit from Facebook or Meta. It's super easy if you like Python. Number 3 is train or test split. Always split your data into training sets and test sets. Number 4 is regular updates. The world changes, so keep updating your models with new data. A forecast built on last year's trends might not hold up in the market today. And there you have it, time series analysis 101. Whether you are predicting your company's sales, your monthly heating bill, or the avocado price, you can use time series analysis to help you find those patterns. If you found this episode helpful, please give it a like if you're watching on YouTube, or if you are just listening on the podcast, please remember to subscribe. And also please share this episode with someone who might be interested in learning about time series analysis. Until next time, keep analyzing, keep forecasting, and keep turning data into your personal superpower. Thanks for listening, guys. I'll catch you in the next one. See ya.